Brian Smith here, and welcome to the DreamPath podcast, where I try to get inside the heads of talented creatives from all over the world. My goal is to demystify and humanize the creative process and make it accessible to everyone. Now let's jump in. Hello, this is Brian Smith, and welcome to my podcast. Today we're going to talk to producer and editor Jason Moore about what we learned from last week's interview with Jere Shea. We're going to try to do this after each interview so that there's an opportunity for us to figure out what the takeaways are from each of these interviews, while also talking about future guests. So I hope you enjoy this short but lively discussion with editor and producer Jason Moore. Welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here again.
Yeah. So what'd you think of the episode, the interview with Jere Shea?
It's really interesting. Well, first of all, he seems like a great guy, you know?
Yeah.
Just one of these guys that just has a passion for acting. But what really surprised me, I think, most out of all of that was that he was willing to give all that up for a while.
Right.
To take care of his family.
Yeah.
That just says what a person he is to do that. That's hard to do, especially as an actor in the entertainment industry. When you drop out of that industry for a while, it's hard sometimes to kind of claw your way back up.
Yeah.
And get back into working mode because you kind of get forgotten.
Yeah, that's what struck me the most, I think, about that interview as well, is he gets this Tony nomination for a Broadway show, Sondheim musical, of all things, and seems to be really on an upward trajectory. And,
yeah.
He's acting in a movie, Southie, with Donnie Wahlberg, and it gets an award at the Seattle International Film Festival, and seems to have all of the ingredients to continue as a Hollywood actor and a stage actor, and leaves it all behind, as you know, for his family. And the cool thing about Jere, and the way he talked about that, is that he didn't talk about it in a regretful way at all.
Right.
He just kind of like, this is too much travel. I want my kids to know who I am. I want them to know that I was there for them. And so he leaves acting for 20 years. And that, I think, takes a certain type of integrity and character in a person to do that.
Absolutely.
So that's what really struck me about Jere as well. You and I kind of saw it the same way. And then, he's working for a nonprofit for many years, and all of a sudden this role just kind of finds him.
Right.
That was pretty cool. That narrative of having a passion for acting to the degree where you're getting nominated for a Tony, going into film, and then leaving it all.
Mm-hmm.
And never really looking back,
right?
Because it's not like he went actually looking for this role. It kind of found him. And another thing I liked about Jere is he really didn't seem to have any ego,
right?
Whatsoever. He's perfectly satisfied in the role that he had on City on a Hill, which was not a starring role. It was a recurring character, but it wasn't a starring role. And very, very comfortable in his place in life, professionally and personally. I don't know. I have a certain prejudice, you'd say, or a preconceived idea of what actors are like.
Yeah, I think I do too. Yeah.
And he did not fit in that mold.
Right.
That was in my mind as, this arrogant Hollywood actor, pretentious.
Exactly.
And
yep.
Yeah. But what I'm finding is the people that are artistic and creative, there's varying levels of commitment that they have to their craft versus their commitment to their personal life and the sacrifices that they make. And he really wasn't willing to make the sacrifice of being on the road as much as he had to be as an actor.
Yeah.
He chose his family over his career. I think that's admirable.
Right.
It's too bad. It's like trial work, very similar to that. And I think probably when you commit to anything with 110% of your being, you give up something in return. There's a price that you pay for that.
Yeah.
There's a book that I read on Essentialism, and I forget the name of the author, but it's on this concept of essentialism. And the idea of essentialism, it's a philosophy. And the idea of essentialism is that you only focus on the things that are essential. Pretty simple approach to life.
Yeah.
Right. And there are a lot of things that are pulling us in various directions in life. There's work, there's family, there's friends, There's personal needs like your health and things like that.
Right.
And the way that this author talked about those things in your life, that he used the metaphor of burners on a stove.
Okay.
So you have the health burner, which is your personal burner, right? Your personal needs. You have your friends. That's another burner. You have your family, and you have work. So you've got 4 basic burners. And you can have 2 burners running at any given time.
Right.
But once you turn on that 3rd burner, the gas and the flame on those other 2 burners goes down.
Oh, yeah.
Because there's only a certain amount of energy and fuel that you have to service all of these needs.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And so what I find with creative energy, you put everything into your creativity, into your career, which is a creative career. There's other burners that are going to be sacrificed.
Yeah.
That's why you see a lot of divorce amongst Hollywood actors, I think, and directors and anybody that is in that industry working their ass off.
Yeah.
Try to get by. And I think the reason that you do it, just like with trial work and the law, if you're not working your ass off, somebody else is. And they're going to set themselves apart from you.
Right.
Right? Especially in a lawsuit where you have an opponent. And if they outwork you, you're going to lose the case.
Right.
If you lose the case, your reputation is harmed, your client is harmed, you're professionally going to have a setback. You're not going to make it very long. And I think acting is probably the same thing. It's like you have to commit to that role. You have to commit to that process, that audition, that film, that play.
Yep.
And if you're not putting in the hours, somebody else is going to set themselves apart from you. Yeah. And they're going to get that part.
You're always replaceable, right?
Yeah. And it's that fear that we have. I think we all have that fear.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
In life, being shut out because of competition or we're not working hard enough. And it really is a sickness, I think, in society where we prioritize work over other things like family and health. And going back to Jere Shea, it was a pretty easy choice for him. He didn't look back.
And I think that's impressive that he was able to come back after 20 years and get back on the horse again. And like you said, it found him kind of.
I think he is definitely a Boston fixture, in that community. He grew up in Boston and he acted in, he went to Tisch in New York. And then after the Sondheim musical, acted in a Boston-based film with Donnie Wahlberg. So he kind of had that reputation of someone who could do the accent really well. He knows that the whole Boston ethos. He grew up in the 80s and 90s there. But yeah, that's probably part of why they found him.
It was an interesting time period to kind of capture in the show too, because I think you said in the interview too that there were not too many shows based in that time period, early 90s.
Yeah. Well, it's an awkward phase too. I mean, that late 80s, early 90s is not good for fashion, in my opinion.
No, you're right.
Not good for hairstyles.
You are right.
Yeah, but it does bring back memories. You and I grew up in that era.
I had a mullet until 1992.
Oh, goodness. We're going to have to edit that out. But yeah, the late 80s, early 90s, fascinating era to capture on film and in television, episodic TV. And to see A-list actors hitting it out of the park with really capturing the essence of that era was pretty cool.
Yeah.
I'm glad Showtime found that series to put on, that it got renewed for a second season.
As a producer, I should probably do more research on what we're doing.
Right.
Instead of learning from just the episode, which I kind of did with Jere Shea a little bit. I went back and watched part of Passion, which was interesting in the beginning there. They did a good job of hiding the nudity and the right angles and the clothes in the right way and everything. And he's got a great voice.
Jere has a great voice.
Great singing voice. And I even saw videos of him playing some songs on his guitar.
Oh, yeah, me too.
And he's good.
Yeah.
Seemed like a kind of a cool guy to hang out with.
A very well-rounded artist and creative. And I remember I watched the whole Broadway musical of Passion. And the whole world of Sondheim is a completely different orbit than most Broadway musicals. I mean, when you listen to a Sondheim musical or you watch one, it's very distinctly Sondheim. And there's part of it that is a little bit inaccessible to me because it's so complicated and not poppy. or catchy.
No.
You know what I mean? There's not a lot about Sondheim that is like, oh, it's a catchy show tune.
Yeah.
It's like storytelling, but pretty deep, complicated stories that are being told over a long period of time.
Mm-hmm.
And so you have to pay attention. And I think for that reason, I consider Sondheim musicals to be a lot more sophisticated storytelling than most stage musicals.
Yeah.
And I have, therefore, a lot of respect for Broadway actors who can tackle Sondheim because it is that complex and difficult material, frankly.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure.
Yeah. So what's up next?
Claude Stein.
Okay.
You would know more about him than I do.
Yeah. Well, Claude Stein is a voice coach and someone that probably is not a household name for listeners,
mm-hmm.
but someone that I had a personal experience with at a workshop last year. And I found him to be talented, passionate, extremely empathic,
mm-hmm.
and able to really help people come out of their shell when it comes to performance and to be in their authentic selves. And so that's what I'll say about Claude. And it's a little bit of a teaser for next week's episode.
It's going to be a good one. It's interesting. Yes.
Neat guy. Someone that can really help people understand what it means to find your voice.
Yeah.
That sounds a little bit cliche to say, find your voice, but that's what he literally does, is he has you sing in a small group, a terrifying experience, and has you get through the initial stage fright, has you get through the part about being in your head when you're worried about what other people are thinking, worrying about how you sound. And the result is finding a part of yourself that you never thought existed.
Yeah.
And that, again, it sounds cheesy to say on mic like that, but it's very real what he does. The transformation that you see in others when you're in these workshops is incredible. And then the transformation that you feel and see in yourself is also really cool.
Isn't it an emotional experience?
Yeah. I mean, there's a psychological part of it too. We'll talk about this. You'll hear me talking about this with Claude on next week's episode, but it's profoundly emotional to sing from your heart in
mm-hmm.
front of strangers. And that's why when you're doing this, it's not uncommon to cry.
Mm.
You see people singing, you hear them singing, and if they're really singing from an authentic place and they're not in their head, they're doing it from someplace deeper than that,
mm-hmm.
Then you can see tears flowing. And that's why I think people who are listening to singers who are singing from the heart will cry.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's why when you go to a musical, and musicals always make me cry, and I don't know why that is, but there's this vulnerability of the people up on stage.
Yeah.
And they're just putting themselves out there. They're belting out a song, and it may not even be a song that you would ever want to buy a CD for or
mm-hmm.
download on iTunes. Not really catchy or whatever, but there's a story being told.
And it's that moment.
Yeah. It's like you're right there in the moment. You're never going to have another moment like that again. It's so intimate.
Right.
And that's what Claude does in these little workshops, is has people singing to the point where they're extremely vulnerable and they're okay with it.
Mm.
And then the audience becomes okay with it. It's what's really awkward is when people get up there and they're embarrassed and they're not singing from an authentic place. They're singing from a place of fear and
mm-hmm.
anxiety and worry. And that makes the audience have fear and anxiety and worry.
Mm-hmm.
But if you get up there and you don't have all of these anxieties swirling around in your head and you're just letting it happen, that freedom is really refreshing to see and hear.
Yeah, you can feel it
in the audience. Yeah. And I think that's part of charisma. Charisma is something that you and I talked about in a prior episode.
Yeah.
How do you find that? How do you embody that concept of charisma? And I think part of it is letting go of anxiety and fear and worry about what other people think.
Mm-hmm.
And that means also letting go of ego. Yeah.
It's hard for some people to do that.
Yeah.
Hard. It's really hard to do.
Well, we all have egos.
Oh, yeah.
And it protects ourselves in some way, and it makes us feel good about ourselves in I think, an inauthentic way.
Yeah.
But it's just part of our structure. It's part of our DNA to have that ego. But if you can let it go and really be in the moment, that's a refreshing thing for people. That's why you're attracted to people that are charismatic. And that's what I think Claude Stein is brilliant at doing, is kind of drawing that charisma out of his students, not so that they're the next Barbra Streisand or, whatever, but, they're not going to come out of those classes as professional singers, but they're going to be transformed in a pretty important way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very therapeutic, right?
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It's therapy. It's, it's a class where you learn actually concrete things. So it's not all woo-woo type of stuff, but there is a psychological, therapeutic element to it. Yeah, it's hard to describe.
Well, we'll just have to wait and hear the episode.
Yeah. But anyway, it's been fun talking about the Jere Shea episode and kind of looking forward to the Claude Stein. And, we have some others that are in the can, so to speak, and we have others that we are going to record shortly. So we've got a fun-packed year, and also 2020 is looking promising as well for DreamPath.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining me, Jason.
Well, thanks for inviting me.
All right. Hey, thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoyed today's episode of the DreamPath podcast. If so, I have a favor to ask. Can you go to your favorite podcast service and give me a rating and review? Your feedback is what keeps this podcast going. I appreciate your time, and as always, go find your dream path.